greatest natural resource is the minds of our children. Those are the words of Walt Disney. I want to repeat that. Our greatest natural resource is the minds of our children. Principals and teachers, not only is the greatest natural resource in your hands, but your immediate challenge is to shape the minds of our children in the midst of a pandemic. What a responsibility, but what an opportunity. You and I have life. We have jobs. And we have an opportunity to make a difference. Today, as we speak, across our currency union, thousands of people are out of work. Many of them come from the tourism sector. In that sector alone, 80,000 people depend on it for their employment. That's direct employment. And of course, many more indirectly. We have a lot to be thankful for. And let's start there. I wish to recognize the Honorable Sean K. Richards, Deputy Prime Minister, and immediate former Minister for Education. I also recognize the Honorable Jonel Powell, the new Minister for Education. And when I heard the PS say, we now have a young, and vibrant minister, I looked at Deputy Prime Minister, but I know he took it in stride, because I was wondering for a moment whether he was implying the immediate past minister was old, not young, and lacking in energy. And I happen to know he's neither of the three, none of the three. But I wish both of you gentlemen very well in your new portfolios. I also want to recognize Mr. William Hodge, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education, the Chief Education Officer, Dr. Debbie Isaac, other education officials, principals, teachers, and everyone associated with education and the teaching community this morning, the President of the Union, the Principal of the CFBC, and others. I just want to recognize all of you. The protocol has been established, but I don't get to see you every day, so I wanted to also recognize you directly. Who knows, I may not be asked back after this. I offer my commendation to the minister, his team, and everyone associated with this sector for all of the work you've done to get us to this point today for the reopening of schools in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. As a parent myself, I am pleased to see our children back in physical school. Although my wife said to me this morning, I'm actually going to miss having them in the house after all these months. So there are mixed feelings among some parents. There are some parents are relieved. There are some parents who were in church rejoicing yesterday and you didn't know what they were rejoicing about. I have a suspicion they were thanking God for liberation, for deliverance after 5 months of having their children whom they love dearly so close, so often, and for so long. So I want us to give thanks. I want us to give thanks. How many of you are really excited and energized about this new school year, this new academic year? How many of you? Thanks. Well, I'm glad. Thank you. So this was not a tremendous show of excitement. But you're in a church, so I'm glad you spoke the truth. Wouldn't want you to say otherwise. But you know what? I get that. And my sense is many of you have mixed feelings about the reopening of school today. Despite all of the consultations and preparations that have gone on, some principals and teachers are a little anxious about what lies ahead this year. And I get that. And frankly, that's normal. So let's not deny it. As I always say, the truth is your friend. So embrace reality, and then we're going to go forward. So some of you may not be anxious today may not be excited today, or may be anxious because of all of the new protocols and all of the things that have gone on. But before we continue, let me ask you to pause, every one of you. And I'm speaking to teachers in the virtual room. So I see you in here in Antioch, but I'm also seeing those who are in the virtual space. And I want to speak to them for a few minutes this morning. Don't get worried. I'm not going to give you a treatise on education today. That's not the time for that. It's a different time and place. But I want everyone now to pause and take a deep breath. Everyone, from the minister right down, Deputy Prime Minister included. All of us, right now. Breathe in and breathe out. Some of you have not exhaled since March. I see the PS, I see the CEO, and others. And the minister who just came on more recently. And many of you have been working in the trenches and behind the scenes. And you're starting a new year, and frankly, you're tired. Because you had to work so hard to get things together for this reopening. And of course, before that, you were very much involved in trying to get the online going during the period of the lockdown and the period when schools physically were closed. You're going to have to breathe again and again, yes, Coach, during this school year. So I'm not leading meditation this morning, but I'm telling you, you're going to have to do that as you go along. But here is our reality. These are COVIDous times. And until an effective vaccine is available, we have to live with this dreaded disease called COVID-19. That's our reality. As someone says, I deal with life as it is, not as I would like it to be. And that is very true in this situation. This is a special moment for education in the Federation. A special moment. Indeed, I will argue it is a legacy-defining moment. Because you see, years from now, you and I, all of us, will be judged not by the fact that there was a pandemic, that will be history, but how we responded to this pandemic. None of us is responsible for its origins or its incidents. But each of us is responsible for our response. That is what we're going to be judged on. And so with your legacy in mind and on the line, I want to offer you 3 suggestions today. Now, I'm on strict time diet, so I have to keep it short. But in the time allotted to me, I want to offer you 3 suggestions. Suggestion number 1. Decide what story you want to tell this year. Remember, you have to determine your response. So here's the first of 3 suggestions. Decide what story you want to tell this year? Now, in deciding on your story, it's important to go back to first principles and ask yourself, what is the purpose of education? What is the purpose of education? And simply put, it is to prepare us for life, work, and citizenship. Education is to prepare us for life, work, and citizenship. Those are very important. Some of us forget the work part and we forget the citizenship part. All three. Every school, every principal, every teacher has to decide today, I suggest, what story you want to tell this year. Here are three storylines. Will you simply go through the motion and do the bare minimum so that you could collect your check or your pay at the end of the month? That's one storyline. Will you descend into a rut of negativity, low energy, low performance? Or will you rise, meet the moment, and deliver high-quality education for the nation's children? What story do you want to tell this year? This is a special year. We all know that. Never in the history of this federation have we had a pandemic such as we have now and have to do all the things that we are doing now. We're learning as we go, all of us. So the question is, what story do you want to tell? And you do not have the option, none of us, of going home, pulling a sheet over our head until the pandemic is past with a message on the phone that says, check me when you're ready for me. Check me when the pandemic is over. None of us has that luxury. Not one of us. How are we going to respond? Which will it be? Having decided what your response is, I ask you today to be intentional from day one. And day one is today. So right now, wherever you are, take a moment and write down what story you want to tell. You could put it in one word. You could put it in a sentence. What comes to you? If you don't have paper, put it on your phone. Everybody has a smartphone. This is personal, folks. At the end of the day, after the Ministry of Education has done all that it has done, after the principal, it always comes down to each of us and personal responsibility. In the same way, all of us have to deal with this pandemic and wear our masks and do our hand washing and watch our distance. The 3 W's, as the PS mentioned. So write down what story you want to tell this year. Because I submit to you, in this new normal, your response, not the adversity of the pandemic, but your response to the pandemic will determine what story you want to tell and define your legacy in education this year and beyond. So that's the first one. I have two more, and then I'm done. Here's the second. Adopt a growth mindset. Adopt a growth mindset. Now, there's been a lot of work done on this issue of growth mindset by educators such as Dr. Carol Dweck at Stanford University. And so there's a pedagogical and so on side to this that you can go into if you want to. I want to make a basic point to you on this suggestion. Like I said, the pandemic is not of our choosing, but we have to respond. And a growth mindset, I believe, will serve you very well this year. From the outset of the pandemic, in my capacity as governor of the central bank, I've said it repeatedly on the outset and throughout, that while this pandemic presents all of us with unprecedented challenges, it also throws up unprecedented opportunities. And what a growth mindset does is that it reframes problems into opportunities. But you have to have the mindset to be able to do that. And instead of simply seeing a problem, begin to see an opportunity lying right before you. The next slide shows you what a contrast is between the two mindsets, a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And I put that up just to help illustrate the difference and to bring home the point why it is so imperative in this period to have a growth mindset. And I'm not going to go through all of it, but here are two things that you see right at the top right of screen. Am I right? You're right. Challenges as opportunities, and perseveres even with obstacles. And then I like the last one at the bottom. You contrast that with the fixed mindset, which is stagnant in a downward spiral of negativity, mediocrity, and even non-performance. That's where some people got stuck in March, between March and July. Some of us got stuck there. Come out! Sorry. You have to forgive me, I'm in a church. So I'm a little confused about whether I'm speaking or preaching, so forgive me. If you find yourself in that mindset, today is a new day and this is a new year, come out of that mindset. Come out of that stagnant rut. Come out! And adopt a growth mindset. Because what you will find as you do that, it is growing an upward spiral of even higher levels of performance and fulfillment. That's a choice you have. That's a choice I have. And we got to decide how we're going to choose. Now here's a recent example. As a consequence of the pandemic and the resultant lockdown, many schools in this region and around the world were forced to go online. Yes? And you know what? Some schools, some countries did in 10 weeks what they had been threatening to do for the past 10 years. When it comes to online platforms and digital instruction and the infusion of these into the classroom. We were forced, and we responded. And as our sister said, teachers, you are resilient and you are creative. You are capable. That's what we know. The only question is our attitude. Because we know the resilience is there. We know that. The only question today is whether or not you want it and whether you're going to rise to the occasion and meet the moment. That's the question. And the government will do what it can to give you the tools, and I'm sure your union will work with the ministry to ensure you have what you need, but at the end of the day, it is still going to be up to you to want to do this for the nation's children and for your country. That is on you. And so as you return to the physical classroom this week and this year, I want to urge you not to return to chalk and talk. Please, do not return to chalk and talk. Please embrace a blended approach to the education of our nation's children. Please. That means a combination of face-to-face and digital instruction. And to be able to do the remedial work that you need to do, you're going to have to use those tools to maximize your in-classroom and face-to-face contact with our students. There are some things they can now do online and they should do online. And then there are other things that you need to reinforce with the face-to-face. And by the way, those newly acquired skills that both you as teachers and the students gain over the last few months have now to be reinforced by the blended approach to their education. So those tablets that the government spent all of this money on and all of this training, and I was so happy to hear about the school champions, great idea. Commend all of those involved in that. You have to use that to maximum effect. Because you see, in this period, some countries are going to move ahead and some countries are going to fall behind. And you have to make sure you have a duty to your country. You have a duty to your federation to ensure that St. Kitts and Nevis is not left behind. That is on you, principals and teachers. working, of course, with your officials. So please do that. And what you will find is not only will it go better and faster, but you are building up our children with the capacity when they get into the world of work or when they go on to university. So that is actually preparing them well for what lies ahead. And teachers, make no mistake, our children are watching. They are looking at you. They are going to take their cues from you. So you have to model a growth mindset for our children. You need to adopt it for yourself, but you have to model it for our children. Because all of the studies show that a growth mindset always results in better learning outcomes and higher student achievement. All of the studies show that. But it starts with you. I actually believe years from now, when we look back at this pandemic and all of the disruption caused by the pandemic, we might actually come to realize that it helps save our education system by propelling it to adopt relevance in its methods and its approaches as a result of what we were forced to do. Many of you wouldn't see that or believe that now. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the breakthrough came in that moment, because that is how disruption and progress often occur. So recognize your time and moment in history and don't fight it, embrace it. And remember, write a good story. This is about legacy now. So if you determine that story you want to tell, with that growth mindset, you can actually write a wonderful story and have a wonderful legacy. Here's my third and final suggestion. So the first was determine what story you want to tell this year. Second, adopt a growth mindset. And the third is let love be your highest goal. Let love be your highest goal. My own mother, dear mother, master teacher, retired school principal, and educator extraordinaire, always says, for those who wish to teach out of love, not for money. Always says that. As much as I love teaching and as much as I want to encourage people to teach out of love, not for money. At least 3 of our children are in teaching. So at least some of us heard that. You're looking at me and you wonder if it's me. I teach, but not in the everyday setting. But I have siblings who teach, including leading one is a principal who teach. But I make this point to say that counsel from my mother is actually grounded in Scripture. 1 Corinthians 14:1. It says exactly this. Let love be your highest goal. That's the NLT, New Living Translation version. NIV says, follow the way of love. Follow the way of love. And I want to submit to us this morning that your love for teaching, your love for our nation's children, your love for God and country will be tested in this academic year. And I want to urge you to show up and show out in this moment. Meet the moment, folks. Meet the moment. Show up and show out. If you're going to rise, you may as well shine. If you're going to show up, you may as well show out. Meet the moment. And put it in perspective. You think about those who went before. How much little physical plant they had to work with. What tools they did not have. the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. Yes, I know this is a different time, but you need a perspective to understand what motivated those teachers then was love. They did not have many of the tools that we now have, but that drove them, that energized them, that propelled them, that inspired them. And I'm making the point today, that must also drive and inspire you. Let love be your highest goal. And you will be tested this year. Some of you, schools, have to do shift system. Some of you may have to work extended hours. That is going to test your love for education and for your country and for your God. Speaking about God, I am a man of faith, as are many of you. Many of you are people of faith. And I want to share with you a great counsel on which I have relied in my 27 years of public life. Next slide. That's my life verse. I'm almost done. And it's this. Whatsoever you do, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not human masters. Colossians 3:23. I cannot begin to tell you how powerful that guidance has been on my own professional life. It has helped me through hurricanes. It has helped me through 9/11. It has helped me through global crisis. It has helped me through transitions of governments. And it is helping me today. So regardless of what is going on around you, whether the Ministry of Education fret you or not, you need to be driven by the command of our God to serve. Not because of who is your boss, but recognize that God is your boss. And that must drive you to give your utmost best for this nation and for our nation's children. Try it. It makes a world of difference in your perspective and how you respond to situations. You know, I recall the story of Jesus and Peter. And Jesus asked Peter, Simon Peter, son of Jonas, do you love me? Jesus asked him that not once, twice. It's as if he wanted to make sure he got the question. And he also wanted to make sure that he answered, his answer was in fact an honest and genuine one. And Peter, 3 times, Lord, you know that I love you. Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And then what did Jesus Christ say to Peter after that? He said what? Feed my sheep. Feed my sheep. So teachers, principals, do you love our nation's children? Do you love God? Then feed our children. Feed our children. Feed our children. See it as your highest calling and feed our children this academic year and going forward. Do that for them, please. Derek Walcott, in his play, The Odyssey, wrote, and I quote, next slide, "The future happens no matter how much we scream." The future happens no matter how much we scream. The Future of Jobs Report 2018 asserts that the jobs of the future include data scientists, robotics specialists, innovation professionals, social media specialists, digital transformation specialists, among others. Consequently, the fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and of course we now have art, STEM or STEAM, are now in greatest demand. So in this regard, I applaud and encourage the current efforts of government and the Ministry of Education on curriculum reform. I didn't go into that today, but I applaud and encourage what you're doing. I read with interest those developments, and I support what you're doing there. I also want to commend the success of Dr. Neil and the team in the area of robotics. Really good to see. And I want to urge you, Minister, and team, and I know you've already started to consider that, to introduce coding in our schools. that will position our nation, position this nation, and our students to take their place as global citizens in the global digital economy. In conclusion, you should smile. Conclusion is nigh. This pandemic will eventually be in our rearview mirror. Just like 9/11, just like Hurricane Gilbert, and the global financial crisis, among others. Today, the future of our children and the future of this federation is at stake and largely in your hands. Consequently, we must ensure during this period that no child is left behind. And Mr. Minister, I welcome the policy focus on equity as part of access for all, education for all, embracing change and securing the future. That equity issue is very important. So I welcome what was done, for example, to make these tablets and even internet connectivity available, because we saw the digital divide during the pandemic between those who have access or have connectivity and those who do not. And we can't afford to leave these children behind. If not, we're going to reap a very bad dividend down the road. We don't want to do that. We'll lose our future. So officials, principals, teachers, in conclusion, if you determine now what story you want to tell this year, adopt a growth mindset, and let love be your highest goal, 1 year from now, you will be pleasantly surprised when you look back on this period how well you have actually done and how much you have accomplished in spite of the challenges. And indeed, you will be grateful and justifiably proud. As you toil and till the soil of our young minds, may the favor of our God rest upon you and establish the work of your hands. Here is wishing you a tremendous year of success, that God would crown all of your efforts with success. Corona is crowned. May you have a wonderful Corona legacy, crowned with success for education our nation's children. Thank you very much. God bless you all.